So let's talk about our final thoughts of the native module with no mods in the base game of Mountain Blade Warband. So overall, it's still kind of a weird game. I don't know if I could give it a strong recommend. It's one of those games where it does one thing really well, which is combat. It's fun, it's janky. AI is dumb. We had the conga lines in siege battles. It's a very flawed and rough game. So definitely from the point where I'm playing, it feels somewhat unfinished in parts. So it's definitely a tougher sell, I would say, to most audiences, especially, coming into 2023. It leaves more to be desired, I guess is the best way to put it. I still had a lot of fun with the game, don't get me wrong. But it feels very basic in some sections where it definitely is just way, way, way more fleshed out in other games in the similar genre. So I guess to give an overall discussion with the Warband module, it does let you go from just working under a lord from the base game to creating your own kingdom, which is kind of neat. It's just a different way to quote-unquote win the game. But I think it does suffer a little bit from the fact that while they did add the feature to declare your own kingdom and have your own banner and basically create your own faction, which is neat, that's about as deep as it goes. It's very surface level, I would say, for the most part. So there's a lot of things that the enemy kings can do, and there's a lot of things that they interact with you upon throughout the game where you have, like, no control over it. So I'll just give, like, a short little laundry list of examples. So, for example, a big thing when you're recruiting people, first up, is you have different discussion topics you can give to the lords as to why you support or don't support certain causes. And that one sentence you give to them is about as deep as it goes. You don't really engage in policy. You don't really do anything with taxes. You don't either send out people to go on quests, and you don't receive any more quests. So building relationships as a lord is weirdly difficult because you can't really do anything to bond with them without literally going to war at every single possible second. There was a feast mechanic, but it's just they show up, you talk to them for like 2 lines of dialogue, and then that's also it. There's no like animation, no mini games, nothing to really do. It just kind of happens, you speak to them, get relationship. And I feel like if you had been able to control things like how the generals patrolled the territories, if you could have had people protecting certain villages, if you could have done things involving spies, either people you suspect are spies you could interrogate, or you could try to send your own people as spies in another kingdom. I feel like there's just a lot of features like that that just can happen from quests from other lords, but you never receive them or have any control over such things. I feel like that's a really big missed opportunity that I definitely would want to see if other mods really touch upon some of those things. I did hear, for example, a couple of people recommend the diplomacy mod, which might fix some of the things I'm looking for. Like another great example for like just diplomacy in general. They can ask for a peace treaty, but we can't, and we don't get to set the terms and conditions. We can't really take territories through negotiations to end the war. Most of the time, there's no purpose, welcome Kirk, there's no purpose to really protecting villages in this game, since the AI, like, beelines for them, and you have no way of protecting them. So what'll end up happening is if anybody is remotely hostile, they will literally go from the opposite end of the map to fight your one village and ignore everything in between. Like, your army won't stop them, your village is not strong enough to defend themselves, it's not worth the time to defend them. Don't need to protect the villages if they're already destroyed, definitely. We played through the game and we basically ignored them, and that let us beat the game. If we had to stop every single time an enemy lord attacked a village, we would literally never complete the game. That's all they do. They will attack it with 1 unit, they'll attack it with up to 30 in a unit, 100, 200. It doesn't matter. They'll just always do it just to annoy you. So that mechanic was not really, I would say, fleshed out, and I would love to see that updated in either a future module or just another mod in general. There's definitely some issues with the combat even as well, where I would love to see how much they enhance it. We've been hearing tales of being able to crouch, which would be a somewhat interesting mechanic. One thing I really want to see not in other modules are lances. They were my least favorite mechanic of Warband. I absolutely loathe the fact that I could be literally untouchable to everybody, and then I died to couch lance damage randomly. And there were like entire factions I didn't want to fight because I could literally die for no reason at any point in time. So like the most dumb things. So it just feels really awkward being at like the end of the game and I could get two-shot in like the heaviest possible armor with the highest possible defense. I die in 2 hits. Like, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. From a balance perspective, that is not the most fun thing. And as much as I like the siege battles where they get into the congas and they're really dumb about it, where they will just bunch up and die, basically, there are some really heinous battles in particular where the AI just completely breaks in, like, not a super fun way. I think a great example is, like, if there is any village rooftops that the enemy archers are on, your own people don't know how to path to them. And if the enemy runs out of ammo, they literally just stare at each other and they don't do anything because your allies don't know how to reach the rooftops. Similarly, there's like really awkward and feels terrible, I would say, siege battles. There are a couple of ladder battles where it's just like so unfair that you only have one ladder into a base with like 200 people in your army. That feels really terrible. Chad and I were all making jokes about the siege tower battles. What was that? 5 minutes of waiting? Like, you don't even get to do anything. You're just waiting for literally 5 minutes, not an exaggeration, waiting for some stupid slow siege tower thing to very slowly go to the base. There's a couple of siege events where they put the ladder behind the castle. So, like, you have to charge the castle and walk all the way around it just to reach the ladder. That feels like that was broken. That doesn't feel right. I mean, that was like almost a 3.5 minute walk from the start in heavy armor just to be able to reach the ladder, not climb the ladder and do battle. You're just literally walking around their like archer towers and there's nothing you could do. There's no other path you could really take. You have to walk through their archers the long way because the game starts you on the wrong end of the map. And it's like, why would you ever put ladders there? Why wouldn't your army be there if you put a ladder there? There's definitely some questionable decisions with the sieges in particular. The open world combat was okay. I really like defense missions. I wish we could more easily get into those, but the enemy just takes way too long to siege. Like, when they do siege, it's fun. You don't have to kill everybody necessarily. You can hold off, like, massive forces. Very questionable sometimes, indeed. Relation building in this game is just, it's okay. Again, it's very surface level. Like, you could do quests for villages, and that builds up relationships so you get more recruits. Like, simple enough. Sometimes you go into villages for lord quests to, like, defeat an outlaw and stuff like that. They're okay. I'm not a big fan of the, what was it, the cow herding minigame. But it is what it is there. It's technically a minigame that exists within the game. They try to give you alternative ways to use combat skills, so even if you're not like an outright warlord, which I think you pretty much have to be if you want to quote-unquote win the game, you could do tournaments. We could see some of the shortfalls in the tournament AI, where the AI will just ram their horses into the walls and not know what to do. And that could be kind of frustrating when it's on your team, when your allies are literally too dumb to help you. You're like just stuck against a wall for no reason. There are definitely some flaws throughout the game. Weapon selling and stuff is not really worth it. I think you can make a decent amount of money with trading. We just never bothered with it for the most part. Like, that exists. You could buy low, sell, or yeah, buy low, sell high kind of things. Like, that definitely exists. I like that it added ventures where we could basically tell people to have like an oil press or other kinds of businesses to generate money. Instead of just outright conquering kingdoms, which plays into more of like a mercantile victory, I would say. We didn't explore helping the other lords take over one of the main factions. Maybe we will in another playthrough at some point. It just seemed like it added time to the game, but didn't necessarily give us like a reason to do it, because it's like, we can help another person rise to power, or we could just conquer the whole land ourselves and save time. So, Mixed feelings about it. It's there, but I don't really see the point in doing it unless you're just looking for something new to do. It doesn't really make you win faster or contribute to a new win condition. You still ultimately have to conquer everybody. I like that you could kind of control the enemy army by being the marshal of your own kingdom if you want to. We never ended up being declared a marshal of like a lord that we joined when we were just starting out. We didn't get to see if that was really a thing. But it was nice that we could slowly build relationship that way as our lord. By just toggling who was the marshal, like, every other day. Some of the marshal quests did feel a little broken, though, and if you are under a different lord, the way they declare war is, like, ultra arbitrary. Like, you could just be wandering full screen around the map, and they're like, oh, I've declared war on the person on the other side of the map. Like, why did that happen? I don't know. There were no conflicts at the border. They didn't really talk about being enemies with the other kingdom. We're literally neutral with them. It just feels kind of weird. There's also times we've seen martial quests from the AI where they're like, come follow me. And they're like, yes, you must stick with me at all times. And then all they do is wander in circles and don't fight anything. So there's definitely a confusion of tactics when it comes to that. And we ended up just ignoring it pretty much halfway through the game where we're like, oh, you're just not going to do anything useful. Bye. At least as a king, we could tell the people to follow us directly, even if we're not a marshal. And we did have them participate in battle. But the weird thing is, like, you don't build relationship that way. So if you tell them to help you in battle, you don't bond with them. But if you bail them out in a battle that they don't choose, you do get a bond. I'm like, you should be able, there should be more ways to build bonds with these people. I'm just saying, like, if you conquer an entire city with somebody, you should be building a bond with them at that point. If you can help them fight bandits and they'll like you more versus you killed an entire kingdom with them and you get less relationship, it's just very weird in the scale of things. Music is solid, but there's definitely some cut in and cut out with the music. It definitely just goes quiet for long periods of time in the game for no explainable reason. So we'll hear like a victory song and then it'll just end. It doesn't loop or move on to a new song. Or sometimes we're in the overworld and it's literally quiet for like 10 or 15 minutes. Just a little odd from a sound design perspective. Combat itself is fairly fun when you control it. There's an auto battle feature, but it's absolutely terrible. Like, it's one of the worst I think I've ever seen in one of these games, and why I didn't bother with it in the playthrough. Like, we could have 100 people to their 30, and I could lose, like, 40 people. Like, just straight up 40 people die. Whereas, like, if I just let the battle play out and then don't do anything, I lose 0 people. So it's very wonky. I'm not even saying, like, I as the player contribute towards a victory. Like, it's just very wonky in how it balances how much casualties you should have. So we did not use that basically at all during the game. It was literally not worth using. It would just drain us of resources. There's clearly some skill and stat imbalances in the game. Like, we basically went pure int versus strength or dex or charisma, and we conquered everything almost instantly. Where if we went strength build, like, yeah, we would get like a little bit of an early advantage, but then we would be weirdly useless in siege battles. Everything would take so long to do. And then our troops would die constantly because we don't have a good doctor. I think that's one thing I'm looking for if there's a mod or module that fixes it. I feel like that plus bonus that goes towards our skills. So on like a scale of 1 to 10, if an ally has 10 points in it, we have 10 ranks in a skill, like surgery, which stops us from dying, or first aid, which heals companions and ourselves every time we have an intermission in battle. And that sounds fine in practice, but or in theory, but in practice, if your lord just gets like 6 or 7 points in it, you end up getting like a +3 bonus or a +4 bonus. So not only do you level like 4 to 5 times faster than any ally, but you even need less points on top of that to be as effective as them. And then on top of that, if you do bother getting to 10 points, you end up with 14 points in categories. And having 14 in a skill versus 10 in a skill is ludicrously broken for certain skills. Like, we had literally 0-hour sieges. If anything was a ladder battle, we instantly did battle. Comparatively, it was taking us with a decent amount of sieging, like 8 hours to siege, or 72 hours for the siege towers. where siege towers were like 6 hours or something at rank 14. So it actually did make a really huge gameplay impact, which normally would be a good thing, but the fact that only your lord can do it kind of shoehorns you into a very specific build, unless you're willing to just wait long periods of time and let the enemy army potentially outpace you or outpressure you. Because most of the time they will end up with way more troop generals than you and troops in general. So anything that slows you down with the world map just kind of blows. So there's not really much you could do other than be an int build, to be honest. Unless you really want to have like a 500 game day kind of thing. Like, we beat the game in under 300 days. We like hard won it like day 248 on like a second or third ever playthrough of the game. So I think we did okay in that regard, given that we were just waiting for the final kingdom to perish at that point, since they'd already lost all their territories. There is also some jank involving that we've seen, not on the stream itself, but in general. I'd just like to make a comment where sometimes if you peace treated them as they are having no people, or if you don't have enough generals in your kingdom, you don't kill their lords fast enough, and then the game just stalls for literally hundreds of days for a kingdom to fall. Even in this playthrough, we kind of saw it, where we conquered our first kingdom, and they didn't fall until like, I don't know, was it like 90 game days after they lost their last territory? Like, that's completely ridiculous. Something is clearly not working as intended, because we've had other kingdoms actually fall before that first kingdom. In fact, I think we had our third kingdom fall before the first kingdom fell. Weirdly. Even though it's like, nothing really changed. I didn't do peace treaties, I didn't do anything different. But just their lord, I guess, is just really well hidden or something. So that feels a bit arbitrary. I'm not sure how much I would really want to see politics added to the game. It's mostly straightforward. All these people have innate relationships, so like, you know, fathers and sons, if you do nice things to them, they'll be positive, but other lords will get jealous. It is kind of annoying that giving out territory makes everybody hate you. So being a king is just hard somewhat arbitrarily, unless you really sit there and only recruit people of the same family at first to build up relationship. It's just kind of like an uphill battle. We basically ignored it halfway through the game. So we acknowledged like the first 10 or so generals we recruited into the army will inevitably completely hate us, and we just chose to go forward with it. Like, there's no way we could salvage the relationship. I think one of the people got as low as -60 because we recruited like 7 people and he got like -80 total between all the different events, like losing marshaldom, -10 per territory, recruiting generals, he became jealous. It was just like so ridiculous. Honestly, it just like shake your head levels of like relationship loss. I would like to see if one of the other modules improves being a villain. From off-stream experience, there didn't really seem to be a point in it. And it seemed like, for example, I would get like 1 or 2 people per faction that would like me, and everybody else would hate me a lot. Whereas if we just go the honorable route, we end up with like 9 or 10 people that end up at literally 100% relationship with no issues. And again, the best way to do that is to go to war. Like, we don't do it because we do honorable things necessarily with other villages or in trading or to them directly. It's just like arbitrarily I choose not to put somebody in jail, and that builds a relationship point with the people. But only certain people. Just to be clear, it's not everybody in your army. It's just certain people like high honor, and they'll go with you. But there's so many more of those people than there are the people that are evil, that it just feels kind of arbitrary, to be honest. So a little disappointing there. I do think raiding villages was fun, even if a bit risky without high looting, just because you get that early cash boost. And honestly, as long as you don't need to recruit from that village again, there's really no downside. Just choose a village that will forever be your raid target, and just GG, it's over. There's all your income in the beginning of the game. I will say I like that the weapon variety at least was kind of entertaining. Like, we used a mixture of crossbow, bow, one-handed, two-handed. I don't like some of the stealth missions where you're trying to go in undetected and it defaults you to just quarterstaff and throwing weapons with no armor. That feels really terrible, I would just like to state. I think regardless of character build, that feels terrible. Just because, like, even with high strength bonus, you're sometimes fighting people with, like, heavy armor. Even towards the end of the game, when we end up with, like, 14, 15 strength and power strike, 5 or 6, which is not a super low amount by any stretch of the imagination, given it's a scale of 1 to 10. The game will just decide, nah, you're still gonna take, like, 6 or more swings to kill them due to momentum and other things like that. So, questionable. But who knows, maybe we'll see improvements in the next module. But I think that's about it in terms of my final thoughts. I think we covered basically everything I wanted to go through. So if chat has any final thoughts for this particular module, feel free to talk about it. There was a multiplayer mechanic and a custom battle mechanic. We didn't bother exploring those. That's not why we play the game. So we're gonna exclude that from the particular final thoughts. I will state, though, I did not like how Bo felt in this game at all. Honestly, I felt like there was no reason to pick Bo in this. I don't know if it's because we downloaded, like, DLC for the game and that impacted how Bo worked. I just don't see how anybody could use it. It was so shaky and inconsistent. Even at, like, 160 weapon training, which improves damage and accuracy, it was all over the place, where literally there was zero sway and 100% accurate crossbow bolts. So we ended up just taking crossbow to, like, 200 something and gave up on bow, like, pretty early in the game. Like, once it was, like, at 110 and it was still swaying a lot in a game where accuracy matters over distance, it's like, yeah, it's over. Definitely not a fan of that. Anyway, I don't see any more final thoughts from the chat, so I think we'll wrap up our comments here. So we'll be playing, I think, another module right after this one, and seeing if we like the changes, if it feels fast, slow, different. I don't really know what to expect with it, to be honest. So I don't know if we'll do a full playthrough, but we'll at least try a couple sessions worth, put our commentary towards it. But for now, I'd just like to thank you again for watching our playthrough of this particular module. Hope to see you again in the next one. Hopefully things work better with the sieges in the other module. Hopefully.